All right, let's get ourselves started. So welcome to this webinar number 4, week 4. So we started these again, just provide a little bit of context. ARC360, in association with I Love Claims, was meant to be hosting our first event of 2020 on the 18th of March at the British Motor Museum. Things changed, obviously, with what we're faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, and subsequently we turned to broadcast a couple of webinars on that day, 3 in fact, one with Eddie Longworth, one with Mark Holding, who joins us again today, and also one focusing specifically on the impact of COVID-19. Subsequent to that, we've rolled these out at every Wednesday, 1:30, and we're just trying to basically pull together as much insight as we can into the industry, understand everyone's perspective on how things are evolving. Once again, we're very conscious this is far more about human health and the health of society than anything else, but obviously our part in that is talking about our industry and the impact it has on our sector. So again, just a big thank you to our sponsors. You'll hopefully notice, those who have tuned in before, got a nice new backdrop as well with all their logos all over it. So huge thank you to these guys. These are the people who make this webinar possible for us. So thank you. And again, our little disclaimer, I'm always keen to put this out just to provide a little bit of a sort of comfort blanket, if for want of a better term, to the speakers. So the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributors, do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. And again, with this thing moving so quickly, you know, what we say at 1:30 on a Wednesday could well be changed significantly by, you know, 5:30 on a Wednesday evening. So we just bear that in mind. Please respect any all contributions, and we encourage you to join in the conversation as much as we possibly can. So great to see everybody. And what we will do, as we usually do, is I'll invite all our speakers just to give you a little welcome and a little bit of a background. Some of them you'll be familiar with, and one of them you might not have seen for a while. But anyway, let's go with you, Mr. Weeks. How are you? How's your week been?
Yeah, really good, thanks, Mark. And thanks for inviting me on this again. I feel very privileged to have been on the 3rd one of these. And hopefully I've got a much better broadband today because I'm over at my mother-in-law's house. So we haven't redecorated the office. Yeah, it's been really busy recently. You know, it's a total change of the normal job. Like for everybody, it's just everybody's having a kind of break from their normal job and just doing something completely different at the moment, which is, you know, dealing with problems and issues and questions that we've never been presented with. So in some ways, it's really exciting. You know, I dare to say I've enjoyed it, but you know, it's definitely been interesting, and you know, I'm really interested to hear what everyone's got to say today as well.
Yeah, I think we're certainly in line for a very exciting session. Mark Holding, the Vela Group, MD of the Vela Group, just welcome back. You joined us on the 18th of March, nonetheless. Just give us a very kind of, you know, little insight, first and foremost, about you, for those who don't actually know you, and then just a little bit of a kind of, you know, 3 weeks on to our conversation then, where actually, you know, we were kind of projecting what might happen, but not a lot had actually happened.
No. It feels like 3 years ago, let alone 3 weeks ago. I don't think I've seen that much change in the last 3 years compared to what happened since we spoke last. I think, yeah, we were just feeling our way through what we felt the impact may be, you know, whether there would or wouldn't be a lockdown and those kind of things. So you know, at the time we'd kind of just set up our working group internally. And as you can imagine, that's still going strong and meeting regularly. So for us, we took our working group and we split it up into, you know, looking at some key areas within the business, and you know, that's proving to work for us. You know, obviously I'm not from a body shop background, so you know, my comfort is in the accounting side. So you know, we've been looking quite a lot at scenario planning and those kind of things as well. So yeah, no, it's been an interesting 3 weeks since we last spoke.
Well, interesting is probably yes, to put it mildly, but we'll come back into more detail very shortly. And also joining us, we've got Mark Bull. So Mark, welcome.
Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon, everybody. All well? I guess nowadays I'm not seeing quite so much out there, but I'm still sort of working fairly heavily behind the scenes, I guess. And a lot of that now is on sort of market research and data analysis, etc. And following this, like the webinar 2 weeks ago, it was only just 2 weeks ago, it was quite apparent that a number of body shops had decided to close immediately after the government had made their announcement, and a number were, and Richard Steele was on, certainly going to stay open and sort of carry on sort of serving key industries, etc. So that's when we decided to do this sort of latest survey, really. And I have to say, in the last couple of weeks, I've probably been busier than what I have in the last couple of years.
Looking good for it, though. So we will. So absolutely. I mean, part and parcel of what we were going to do today was run through the survey. So those who haven't seen it, this could obviously be your first sight of it. Those who have downloaded a copy, fantastic. Hope it's proved of value. We'll provide a little bit more depth on it, dive a little bit deeper into it today. And what we'll also do is kind of, build into that. First and foremost, we'll have a little roundup from the panelists in terms of where we're currently at. And then we'll also close that off with something that Chris is going to bring to the webinar today in terms of some workings and some far more sort of a visual insight into body shop profitability or cash flow at the moment. So Chris, can I come back to you? So as from last week, we were kind of, well, everything was up in the air as it probably is still, really. But what have been the major sort of moves this week in the past 7 days since last Wednesday in terms of your feedback, what you're hearing, and the movements of the MBRA as well?
I think mainly, Mark, it started to calm down, really. So all the different challenges of understanding furlough, understanding retail, whether you can get rates relief, whether you can stay open or not, all of those things that are really hitting us at high speed to begin with are starting to settle down now. It's a bit like coronavirus itself. Everyone's become an expert on furloughing staff now and everything else. I get all my information off of Facebook, by the way. But yeah, it started to calm down a lot, and those that were thinking about closing have now closed. It's just starting to sort of settle in, really, and now people are starting to look at the finer elements of, is it right to stay open at the moment? Is it right to close? Really starting to sort of think more succinctly about the financial challenge and what that might mean for cash, also in terms of cash flow, but also the relationships that they've got with their work providers, the duty of care that they've got for their staff and everything else. So it's more looking into the finite details of it now and making decisions around, what do we do next? I think that's been the thrust of it, really.
Is that a fair reflection from your side, Mark, in terms of where you think things currently stand?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that was the feedback that sort of came back quite strongly through the survey. It was, so really a lot's happened in the last 2 weeks. And whilst a lot of body shops initially were looking to sort of, go through and trade through this to support obviously their own staff and families, etc., and the work providers in time. And some of them took a couple of days, considering it now. It's whether it's right to stay open on economic reasons or is it right to close on moral reasons. Now that depends a lot on the sort of size of business, the type of work you do, etc. But I think that's where the sort of confusion was early on. But as Chris said, it's kind of probably settled down a wee bit now when people have got come to terms with what they've got to deal with.
Yeah, and I think that's probably fair from where we sit, or from where I sit and what I'm hearing. Mark, Holding, what about sort of the grassroots of things?
Obviously the big scenario to run through was whether to stay open or not from a body shop perspective. I think that was the point that we all reached quite quickly. So, they were when we did our scenario planning, I think we were looking at the both economic and moral reasons behind staying open or not. For us, we very much see ourselves as a B2B business rather than retail. Probably, linking in quite well with Eddie's presentation way back on the 18th as well. It was quite apt in terms of timing, in terms of our decision making. Sitting in the middle of the supply chain, we felt we had a responsibility to our customers to try to continue to deliver a service, and to get round the kind of moral safety aspect. We did a survey of all our staff, every single staff member, to ask them how they felt about remaining in work and not. And with the reduction in volumes when it came to furloughing staff, we tried to accommodate those who felt that they would rather remain off, and those that wanted to stay in. The thought of being locked in with the husband, wife, or kids, and they felt they'd rather be in work. They're the ones that we kind of kept in. So I think in between that window, I think speaking to a lot of other repairers, there was quite a lot of disruption in sites as people were quite rightly worried about the health implications of the coronavirus, and the social distancing, as we all know, is quite difficult in a fully staffed body shop. So reducing those staffing levels helped, not only with a cost basis, but also helps us to comply a lot better with the social distancing and those kind of elements of it as well.
Okay, and now obviously kind of beyond, if you like, those initial hurdles, where are your sort of sites now in terms of the business, and where are you looking really?
So when we spoke on the 18th, obviously we were still looking at whether there would be a lockdown. The Monday after, obviously Boris announced it on that day. The very next day, our volumes started to disappear. I think last week we were about 70% down on a traditional week for us, which has meant on the 1st of April we furloughed about 60% of our staff. So about 112 staff were furloughed, leaving us with roughly about 80 staff in across our sites.
Wow. Okie dokie. All right. So we'll come back in terms of sort of Q&As, questions, and things that I'm sure will stem from what we're about to discuss. But I wanted us to look at the survey really, because we've been working hard on this one. And if you don't mind, Mark, what I'll do is I'll let, as in Mark Bull, I'll just let you make a little bit of an introduction in terms of where we were with the survey really.
Well, I guess the first thing to say, thank you to all of the respondents that actually came back very quickly, because the survey was only open for 5 days. So we ran it from, I think it was the 27th of March through to the 1st of April or something like that. I've probably got the dates wrong, I apologise. And we got a very good mix of body shops that sort of responded to this. So I think it gives a very good indication of where we are in the market really today. The only thing we didn't really touch on was the economic factors, because that's probably something we can follow up on in terms of how it's impacting on the industry across, as a whole. So we'll come to that down the line. But this just sort of was where body shops stood in terms of open closures, where they were with staff, and how they feel in terms of things going forward.
All right, so again, just to provide a little bit of context, 224 body shop owner manager responses, representing 504 individual sites, and we equated that to work out 92.5% for the largest 40 independent body shop businesses in the UK. Again, just in terms of time factors, got to put a sort of time scale on this. It was last week, so Monday 30th March to Friday the 3rd of April. So indicated turnover of the businesses who participated. Chris Weeks, representative of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, with the 504 sites covered, 95% of the sort of bigger shops, I think it's tremendous response, absolutely incredible. In terms of the time that was available to do it. So yeah, I think this is a really great representation of it, really.
Okay. And again, it was one of those things that we really wanted to turn around quickly, as you can imagine, and as we all know with this kind of thing, things are changing by the week. So there was no point in sitting on this. We needed to get it done. We needed to get it done quickly. So yeah, thank you very much to all those who took part. So as of last week, temporary closures. Again, we did sort of reveal these partial findings last week. 49%. Or close, 24% possibly do so shortly. Again, that will be something that we all suspect last week, tail end of last week, possibly Friday, could have been impacted again as the clock ticked. But we will, again, when we run this survey again, we'll certainly get a better understanding once again on that. Intending to stay open to key workers, again, 45%. Review as the time passes, 40%. Definite no's, 15% effectively. Employee management, again, this was one of the ones that we really wanted to look at in terms of how those businesses are managing things. Furloughing of staff, nearly 65%. Retained employees on full pay, 14%. Redundancies, sadly, 0.5%, not a big number, but again, always never good to see that. And a mixture of the above, 20.8. This is kind of where we obviously start to, understand people's sort of psyche at the moment, looking ahead, and fully understandable in terms of these figures. I think it's fair to say. So recruit any technicians next 3 month period, again 60% no, unlikely 30%, 32%. Apprentices, similar kind of figures really. No real surprises there. Chris, Mark, any thoughts on those?
From my point, I think, as the question asks over the next 3 months, I think that doesn't surprise me, no. Is anybody going to be putting in apprentices in the short term? I don't think so. But after that, I think is the real big question now. It depends exactly what happens to claim volumes, what happens to frequency. Are more people going to be working at home? Are more people going to be driving whilst they're at home? There's so many unanswered questions at the moment that a survey won't be able to deal with it. But if you kind of work on the basis that if you did work on an assumption that all the claims were to return eventually, then, we had a massive apprentice problem. We had a massive skills shortage before. Even if we end up with less body shops, the work is going to be there and we're just going to have all the same problems. So, I would like to think that we will be looking for apprentices again, and, we will make sure that the industry and the skills continue to grow.
Yeah, and again, we just taking some comments. I mean, the actual report itself, Mark will tell you where the link is, etc., at the end of all of this, but full of commentary provided by those respondees. I've just picked out some sort of flow ones that were representative of the masses. Uncertainty, obviously. Take a long time, even after this, to get back up to normality, whatever normality may be. The great thing was any mention of apprentices put on hold, delayed starts, rather than kind of just walked away from them, which is great. So that's always good news. Interesting comment there, real positive stuff. Use this time to grow and develop via training and research. Yeah, absolutely. Information, I think, was key. Again, that was kind of recurring theme, is keeping everyone updated on what is happening, how it's working. One worrying comment, staff wanting to leave us and possibly the sector. Again, with what we currently face in terms of skilled people, that could be a huge concern. And another kind of opportunity to look at things, the potential staff pool. if businesses are to fall by the wayside, could increase. So again, potential there for others to make the most of a bad situation. Mark Bull, any more comments on this part of the survey at all?
Not really. I guess the part on apprentices, that we can only hope that will return, because as been alluded to, the skilled staff are going to be required in the future. That's the first thing. And then secondly, the staff pool at the bottom, well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? I dare say if any staff are out there and they're good at the job, they're going to secure themselves a good job somewhere in the market. So it's that's an interesting point, but I'm not quite sure it's so valid, whoever made that. So it's not my call to sort of make the comments valid. I just produce them.
Exactly. All right, so second section looks more at the supply chain for body shops. So access to painted materials, any issues. At the moment in time, last week, yes, but not too disruptive, 40%. No issues at all, 45%. So it was looking pretty good. Access to PPE, again, yes, but not too disruptive. No issues at all. This is kind of all relative to what we do. Obviously, a body shop can't function without PPE, but at the same time, the NHS is crying out for this stuff right now. So we'll kind of skim over that one. OEM parts issues, that was the big thing for everyone, I think, a couple of weeks ago. That was the one thing we were all talking about in terms of body shops continuing to keep their doors open. Obviously, huge issues there. In terms of that supply, 82% claiming it's been disruptive. Aftermarket parts issues, no issues at all, 45%. And green parts, again, no issues at all, 52%. What I would add is a little caveat, again, going back onto the comments and things. There were several that sort of hinted that they didn't use green parts or non-approved parts anyway, so that may be a little skewed, I don't know. But again, lots of commentary around the main agents, main OEM suppliers closing. An interesting comment there, charging for customers for their collection of parts. Certainly heard stories of people travelling far and wide to collect parts. Materials all okay. And again, legislative PPE issues or challenges are a potential at the moment. Mark Holding, any sort of thoughts around this in terms of your own business, what you're experiencing?
Really going back to our when we started looking at this back on the 11th, 12th, 13th, around that time, supply chain was one of the 5 areas we really started looking at and started to talk to. And I think what it's highlighted is where we have really strong suppliers and good relationships and professional suppliers, things around distribution, around mobility, things like that. They've wanted to deliver a service to us, so that, much like I was saying at the start, in terms of me having an opinion that we needed to supply our customers, the fact that some of our customers really wanted to support us through this, both for their own reasons, but also they viewed us as a customer they need to support. I think one of the stark things is one of the biggest areas of our industry and our business in terms of part supply, to have that almost be an afterthought and shut down overnight with no thought to supporting body shops or their customers. I don't know. I think that's something as an industry we've got to review. That how can we let something, it's not a massive spend, but our part spend is £8 million a year nearly. And to have that cut off with not a word of conversation from anyone, I don't know many other industries where that would not have a debrief after this has kind of happened, and we wouldn't look into how did that happen and what do we do about it, because for me that was that caused a lot of issues and a lot of heartache and a lot of pain for every body shop. And again, the likes of MBRA, Vision, Enterprise, and those others that we've heard have had to get involved, and and the insurers, and start trying to get that going again. And so for me, I think that's something that we all need to have a look at going forward, really.
Yeah, great stuff. And Chris, anything sort of stand out in that section for yourself in terms of what you're gleaning from industry?
Yeah, like, I really take Mark's point on board, really. You know, it's kind of, parts is such a massive part of our industry, ignore the pun. But yeah, no, there's no sort of owner of it. Nobody's owning parts, and nobody's sort of collectively bringing it all together. And you know, this sort of necessity is the mother of invention. You know, I've been contacted by a company this week that's really trying to sort of bring a solution together that picks up everything of you know, OEM parts, aftermarket, green, just one way to sort of bring it all together. So, and it's somebody we all know as well. But you know, I think, you know, when I sort of heard that, I thought, you know, it makes so much sense. You know, we really do need some ownership of that now. So yeah, I think it will generate a different way of, potentially some different ways of working in the future around parts, so that this sort of thing doesn't happen.
Mark, Paul, anything to add on that section? Was there anything that stood out for yourself?
Well, no, only the help really that has come in sort of subsequent to the dealers just closing their, their shops and their parts departments, because yeah, Chris Mackay is obviously doing very good work behind the scenes to ensure that sort of Vision Network and beyond are able to get parts, and that's been sort of backed up by sort of OEC Advantage and various others as well. So I think it's been good again that the industry has come together to try to solve a problem that in many ways it didn't think it would face and shouldn't have faced. And maybe, dare I say, just to add to that, and not to add to Mr. Weeks' burden, but obviously the dialogue can go on between the NFDA and NEBRA as to how this might not happen in the future.
All right, so if we just continue to work our way through the survey, and again, this is a very much a whistle-stop tour, so forgive us on that part, but how confident are you that your business can withstand the financial impacts? And this is based on further 2 months. Industry showing some good confidence in essence. So that's a great thing at that given moment in time. Business improve in the second half of the year, again assuming this whole pandemic crisis has passed. Some great figures there. What are we, 80% confident in one way, shape or form? So, you know, the resilience of the industry yet again is shining through, which is a great thing. There is obviously a minority that are not so confident. So again, it's not a surprise as such. But the industry, you know, starting to see perhaps the reality of the situation and coming out of this. So again, just some comments that we picked up on in terms of based on how customers can do better. So these are verbatim comments from repairers who responded. A lot around cash flow at the moment. So basically faster payment processes, removal of discounts as much as possible, raise the labour rate. So again, if you like, kind of common arguments that we've had for over the years, but probably more so needed now than ever. Some people saying that, you know, don't believe there's a great deal that they can do. That was there in a few counts. Faster payment cycles, remove discounts, paying for mobility solutions and recovery, providing mobility on total losses via hire cars, not courtesy cars, relaxing the rules on non or OE parts so we can fit what is available. Again, praise, fairly supportive, some more than others. And then just one really patience and support and hoping for a mad rush of business when we get back to relative normality. So thoughts around that really, guys. Mark, I'll come to you first. You probably had better sight of this survey than anyone.
Yeah, I don't know when it is that we're going to turn back to some sort of sense of normality, but I think this is, you know, the important thing. It's going to go on for many months. And you know, I've looked at the economic sort of factors this morning, and it looks like sort of it's around £30 million per week is being lost in revenues to the body shop industry. So I guess the key thing that obviously came out from the survey was please pay us quicker. It came out in last week's webinar as well. And I think that probably is one of the crucial things going forward, that cash flow is there and body shops can kind of manage their way out of trading out of the situation, because obviously when they start to trade out of the situation, credit lines might be sort of tightened. They'll certainly have more exposure when they're sort of buying parts, etc. And they probably can't afford to have sort of long payment cycles. So payment is probably the key.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's something we touched upon last week when we had Michael on from LV and stuff. Chris Weeks, thoughts on sort of the overall commentary there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's in line with everything we've said. There's been some interesting sort of developments as this has gone on around the kind of concessions that have been made by different insurers around the mobility. I think there was one that just came out from Allianz yesterday. I won't sort of go into the details, but it was probably one of the better ones that we've seen so far. So there has been a lot of adapting along the way to this in terms of sort of mobility, in terms of rates, in terms of parts and everything else. But yeah, and the kind of overall view that there's roughly about 80% of the body shop survey that have some positivity that they're going to see their way through this and come out the other side is very heartening. But the trouble is, of course, nobody really knows how long this is going to go on, and whether they're going to have enough cash to see themselves through it.
Yeah, that's a fair comment there. Mark, I know you've kind of, obviously the survey only went live yesterday, so you've probably not had a chance to review it too much, but what are your thoughts on what you saw?
It kind of rings true with how we see it and how we kind of imagine the split would be. As an industry, we're quite optimistic. We're normally quite negative about a lot of things, but when it comes to our own ability to get through things, we're quite optimistic and generally do as well. So 80% saying that they are going to get through it, probably rings true. The tough thing is we've always been a volume business, and a volume industry. We normally operate as a whole for the groups and stuff, single digit, maybe getting up towards double digits if you depending how you're running it. So when that volume's not there, not to steal Chris's thunder, but the impact is quite severe to body shops, both in terms of P&L and immediate cash flow. So that impact could be quite heavy quite quickly, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads us quite nicely on. Great link there, Mark Holding. So Chris, we obviously had a little catch up earlier. We were just testing the system, and you said you've got something to show us all, and we all kind of sat and went through it, and it looked really, really valuable stuff. So I'm going to hand over the reins to you for the next couple of minutes to just show us what you've been working on and talk us through it.
Share a screen. I hope it works. No, not that. Let's try again. That's it. Okay, can everyone see that spreadsheet?
I certainly can.
Yeah, okay. Well, so about a week ago, I came on here and I was sort of talking about the kind of financial requirement that would be necessary for a body shop to break even, should they sort of choose to trade through these unusual circumstances. I think I came up with a number of about £400, which, to be honest, all body shops are different, and this will be different for all body shops. But I wanted to try and prove it with numbers. And I was fortunate that Wayne Mason-Drust of Acton Express sent me an absolutely amazing comprehensive spreadsheet that he had built for calculating the impact of a business of furloughing staff as you went through the months. And if anyone wants that, I'm sure I can sort of forward that on. But for the purposes of trying to explain this, I built one myself that hopefully is a little bit easier to sort of look at. So, you know, everyone will recognise this sort of piece over here, you know, average hours labour, realised labour rate, paint parts, margins, etc., an average repair cost, and a gross profit margin. This is a kind of a typical sort of bunch of numbers that I've put in here. What I've tried to do over this side is plug in a real body shop's expenses in terms of overhead costs, technicians, what their sales income is, after bottom line discounts, take away the fixed cost, come through to a net profit and a profit margin. So, you know, this is based on a real body shop's numbers, and this is the kind of thing that you'd normally see month on month. You know, an £11,000 profit during the month, 4.1 net margin, and a profit per job of this sort of thing. So what I wanted to do over here is see what kind of impact reduced volumes would have on a business. So this can sort of, you know, be changed and mess around with it. But, you know, we're sort of hearing volumes of instructions roughly 70% down, meaning that as time goes on, a body shop will probably be running at about 30% of its normal productivity. So that means instead of 165 jobs, it does roughly 50, lower hours. And under these circumstances, a lot of body shops are thinking, well, you know, what can I get rid of at the moment? So, you know, often not the rent. They might have applied for rates relief, and that's down to 0 now. As there's fewer jobs, they might have reduced their utilities and some other costs as well they might have got rid of. You know, but they can't get rid of a lot of them. A lot of them are just going to be there no matter what. So fixed costs reduced. Yes, they can reduce their staff numbers. So with that a smaller amount of work, they would need less technicians, less office staff. So all of those costs can come out. But bearing in mind, they're probably working in a less efficient way. You know, these numbers won't be directly correlated with the fall in reduced work coming in. So if you just bring it down to the bottom there, the calculator works out that an ordinary body shop that's taken out as much cost as it can and has furloughed its staff would probably at 30% be going from £11,000 profit to a £16,000 loss trading at the moment. Now, you know, and that kind of just shows the commitment that a lot of body shops have shown, trying to trade through, trying to support their work partners here. Now, I've worked out here that, you know, to break even would require another £326 per job of income. That's an equivalent of a rate changing from £30 an hour to £48.64. So, you know, you can see this kind of gap that's required here to just make a body shop that's trading at the moment break even. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you've only got us to respond to you, but I'm sure we'll see in the chat. But what's the talk through the other column on the far right, the closed column?
The far right one was to try and calculate. So a lot of body shops at the moment will be going through that. You know, do I stay open? Do I close? So I kind of worked out a closed column as well, where you know, you furloughed all the staff, you've taken out as much cost as possible. Maybe you've got a couple of people in there just, you know, running this sort of Christmas kind of approach to things where you just take instructions. Obviously the sales come down massively, costs come down, but as you can see, they're still going to lose a lot of money. In fact, you know, the cost of closing is not a lot different to the cost of carrying on trading. The only thing that's much more attractive in this model is if you've closed the business, you're not paying out for all the parts, paint and everything else. So from a cash flow point of view, it works a lot better for some body shops to try and just close up and see if they can weather the storm. So that just shows how marginal it is. I've also stuck in a couple of other bits here. So if we look at this number now, 16,146, I'll just write that down there. So that's what the loss was trading at the moment. If we were to put in some of the measures that insurers have helped body shops with, so put in a £10 COVID charge. In fact, let's make it a £20 COVID charge, and give give body shops an extra 10% off of their discount for parts, right? So waive 10% of the discount, so that moves their margin up to 25. If you do that, the body shop's still making a loss of 11,632. So yes, an improvement of about £5,000, but as I said sort of last week, the measures that are being taken at the moment are way short of what a body shop would need to kind of break even going through this. So those that are choosing to do it are just doing an amazing job, really.
That's brilliant. Yes. Thanks, Chris. Thank you very much. And again, Mark, probably you've been working on similar sheets, slightly larger numbers in your case, in terms of business. So just tell us a little bit about, sorry, Mark Holding, just tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing at the Vela Group.
Yeah, pretty similar scenarios, as you can imagine. Probably going into a bit more detail. We've got 7-8 sites overhead to look at, really. So similar thinking, really. We are seeing the uplift that we're getting in parts discount is really mainly offsetting us going outside our normal supply chain arrangements. So we're not actually seeing the increase in margin flowing through. It's actually more to almost stay still on our current margins, because we're using suppliers that we don't normally use before. They're trying to protect their margins and maintain their profits. So and then the scenario around cash is a big one, really. The being closed, especially if you can get relief on your rents and stuff off landlords. From a cash perspective, you could keep quite a lot in your business closed. He says, as he's now going to say why they stayed open. And Brendan, our head of finance, is online as well, so he's probably going to be questioning it as well. But it's finding that tipping point, really, between financial boosts on it and also just volume. When Chris changed the sheet to about 50%, in our head we have our break even around 50%, with some with the support through furloughing staff, with some low hanging fruit from a cost base. For us, we see being able to operate at 50% gets us through. We're quite fortunate from a supply chain point of view. We get good credit terms, and from a customer basis, we get really good payment terms. So our working capital cycle is quite good. So we're quite fortunate there. We really see, unless there is a real change in the stimulus per job to the level that Chris has said, the body shops that are open would have to be running around 50% just to break even, and that doesn't factor in any cash elements and stuff in it. So interesting times. Very
interesting times indeed. And Mark Bull, that was the first time you saw that was a couple of hours ago, Chris's sort of working sheet. And with your background, insight into the knowledge, what would your thoughts be around that?
Well, first of all, great piece of work, and as Chris said, it sort of builds on what Wayne and Louise have put together at Accent Express. So it's really good, and I guess it paints the true picture of what's happening out there. And again, I guess that's the same in many other industries. For this one, the body shops are so reliant on the work volume coming through from insurers, and the insurers obviously having a wee bit of a control mechanism in terms of terms. That's really where the shackles potentially need to be released. But then again, it's never that easy, is it? Because the insurers have to look after their shareholders, etc. So it's going to be an interesting sort of scenario to see how this can be addressed properly and across the piece, because one insurer can't offer the, whatever the money may be, whether it's £200, £300, £400 per job variance, and be uncompetitive against their rivals. So it needs to be a bit of a seismic shift across the industry, really. And it's very difficult to know how that can be brought together without having all parties in the room, and that's not going to happen. Of course, if it was to happen, then the body shops would be seeking their competitive advantage and maybe look to do the job at slightly lesser cost. So it's going to be a very, very difficult sort of scenario to sort of move forward. But certainly dialogue's got to take place, and I guess the likes of Mark and Vellas and various other of the groups will be talking to their sort of work providers and trying to secure probably terms on an individual basis to take them forward.
Yeah, great piece of work, Chris. That's clearly been recognised by those tuned in at the moment. Is that available, Chris? Is that something that others can use?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make that available. And I spoke to Wayne before, and like Wayne is, so I took quite a crude approach to furloughing staff there. But Wayne has got a really, really sort of detailed model, and Wayne has agreed to share his. And I'm happy to share this as well. Now, if it helps anybody make a decision about staying open, close, or what to do next, then yeah, not a problem.
Fantastic. That's great stuff. Really, really good stuff there. And Mark, what we'll do is we've got a few questions coming through. So what we'll do is we'll try and tidy those up in a second. Mark Bull, the survey, where do people find the report?
That's on my website, which is www.trendtracker.co.uk. And there's a page at the top called Reports and Data, and it can be downloaded free of charge from there.
And it's been well received to date?
It's been well received. I've been quite humbled by some of the comments, to be quite honest, so that's nice. It's been well downloaded as well, so most people in the industry have actually got a copy of this, but there will be those that haven't, of course. So it's there, it's free of charge, and it just really paints the picture of where we are today. Will be a moving picture, so maybe we'll repeat the survey in a few weeks' time just to see how the position's changed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of front of mind in terms of where we'll go with that. And again, great things out there. You know, pooling these resources, pooling the survey and the report, and Chris's workings and Wayne's document that he's produced. It can only help everyone really in trying to work our way through the various scenarios that exist. So. Just turning our attention to a couple of the questions that are coming through. So, Chris, I've seen quite a few questions around rates relief and rent. What's your understanding of that in terms of for body shops at the moment?
Well, I know this was a bit confusing to begin with. So the whole point about body shops, well, the relief is for retail businesses, and I think half the challenge is you have to make the appeal to your local council, and all the local councils have got different views of what retail is. But at MBRA, we've been sort of putting out a lot of communications around this, and have also provided the body shops, certainly with the rateable value under 51,000, a kind of sample letter to use that's really helped quite a few of them with getting the relief from their local council. Obviously, we would like all body shops to get that kind of rates relief, and we're working with the IGA to see if we can get that. But do you know what my view would be on this right now is, if you're paying rates, personally, you can't hang me on it, but I would say just cancel your money, cancel your direct debit, and let them try and come back to you for it, because there's so much, it's such a lack of clarity in the different councils at the moment that I think put the onus on them to prove that you're not a retail business at the moment.
Okay.
Don't go to prison for it, though.
Don't quote Chris Weeks on that one. Question or comment coming from Dave Sargent, Gemini. Hey, Dave. Little question about paying parts and paint suppliers at present. Have you sort of heard anything along those lines, Chris Weeks, in terms of that relationship or the mechanisms there?
Yeah, I did see that question. It was about, it was about paying suppliers really. And to be honest, I don't actually have any answers on that, because I haven't really asked the question myself. Otherwise, I would have tried to answer it. But, I know that certain suppliers out there have started to sort of give payment holidays. And I noticed that sort of BMS and Emacs were probably the first to announce. And, got to give credit where it's due. Real Repair has been putting pressure on just about everyone to sort of give a payment holiday. At the MPRA, we've sort of also given payment holidays not deferred for those that really, really need it. But I'm pleased to say that there have actually been very, very few that have kind of requested it. So, and I think we'll see more of it. I know people are keen to see what Aldatex and Slayer are going to come up with as well. I know Dave was on the call last week. So there's some sort of interesting sort of stuff emerging in that space there. But in terms of parts and payment of other suppliers, maybe it's something Mark could help with.
Mark,
have you just handed the baton over there?
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, in terms of us, we as part of engaging with our supply chain, we touch base with a lot of them really early doors, and either some we've got really good payment terms with, and others we haven't. Again, the interesting thing was a lot of the dealers couldn't deliver parts, but their credit control departments were all in. So they obviously, when they got the priorities, chasing payment was right up there, unlike delivering parts. So, but we've tried to make sure we kept paying everyone, much like we would ask our customers to pay us. We think it's only fair that we pass that on down the line, really. So with us being open as well, we're reliant on supply. So making sure we could keep those going really is key for us. And in our view, this is a medium-term thing. So not making any short-term decisions, other than those around survival. And every business is going to be different. But for us, we're reasonably comfortable with our balance sheet. So making sure that we didn't do anything that was going to have a long-term impact on our reputation and credit were important to us.
Yes.
Just one thing I wanted to throw in there, Mark, actually. Like last week, having sort of seen that model, everyone will see how important cash flow is for body shops at the moment to just keep on going, whether they hibernated or whether they're trading. And I did ask if work providers could do their best to literally clear the decks, pay anything that's outstanding to body shops. If it's a bit over, it's a bit under, reconcile it later on. But like anything that's in there that's a current debt or an aged debt, just get it paid, please. So I'll be really interested to hear, and I don't think we're going to sort of hear it on this, but, via direct messaging or whatever, if anyone is experiencing considerably accelerated payments from work providers, or if anyone is sort of seeing a real slowdown in payments from work providers. I'm really keen to hear either of those, because it's literally critical at the moment that body shops are getting paid as much cash as possible to keep going.
I think some of the bits we've had, Chris, was a lot of insurers have been moving departments to working from home, having staff off in isolation and stuff. So how we found it is that verbally, at least, there very much is an appetite to engage with us on payments. In fact, we've had our customers chasing us to say, send us a statement, let us help you with the debt. And then have been honest and said, however, we are trying to move a load of people that were never really designed to work from home. And also, we do have, staffing issues due to isolation, sometimes due to engineering and those kind of things. So our experience of it has been that from our customers, at least, they are trying to support.
That's great. And, again, as Chris has said, as Mark have said, we'd love to hear any kind of, instances of real, positive relationships out there, partnerships, and, we'll happily bring those to the fore next week, just to let you know. I am looking to do and I hate to use the term, work provider kind of special. So those questions that are more sort of focused at work providers that I've received during the week and today as well, we'll take those across for you and pose them to the panel next week. Mark Bull, next survey, perhaps we could look at something around the sort of supplier partnerships, payments and this kind of thing, without going too much in depth, but obviously just get more of a picture around, where the land lies there, perhaps.
That certainly would sound to be sensible, wouldn't it? That's where the sort of focus is moving really. So yes, yeah, makes sense.
I think so. Again, we are kind of drawing to a close here today. So again, we're very, very conscious that people have got very busy lifestyles at the moment. We as ARC360, I Love Claims, we are trying to piece together a bit more of a kind of a round table discussion. So please, if anyone's got any more questions, queries, and people are very active emailing me throughout the week, you know, scenarios based. What could the industry look like? What do you think it should look like as we come out of this? Great little point from I think it was Nick, wasn't it? Was it Nick Williams? Sudden influx of work post the lockdown. You know, how would that look? Is that a reality, or will we come far more sort of slowly out of this thing? Again, nobody really knows right now, so we'll just have to see how we go. Closing comments, Chris, can I come to you? Where are we? Easter weekend, in theory. Not that probably changes much for anyone right now.
Yeah, isn't it?
But you know, what are you kind of looking out for over the next couple of days, week? Really, where are your sights set?
I think more body shops are sort of considering what they do as the lead up to this bank holiday weekend. Actually, it feels like a kind of natural break to make a decision for some. But really, I think the focus has to be on, you know, what happens after this, and I think that's where my focus is going to be, and what I'm going to be talking to our members about. You know, try to understand how they make the best of the situation as they come out of it for those that survive, really, and also for helping those that are really, really struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Holding, same question to you.
Yeah, for us, we're still very much in the getting our business into holding pattern, break even kind of level. I think that's going to be everyone's objective, minimising losses at the moment. And then from that is understanding what the new normal is, how long that's going to be around for, and then kind of planning on what startup looks like. You know, is it how do you bring staff back? Is it one site phase per site? You know, will coronavirus still be around? Will we have to still look at social distancing and those kind of elements? And then also looking at what could we do differently? You know, we always had a thing in the business where we talk about if only we could shut and you know, fix a load of things. Well, now's a good time for all those things that you haven't normally been able to get sorted. So we're also looking at trying to introduce some of that best practice that maybe has been a little bit difficult to get in whilst going at 100 miles an hour. So for us, you know, get to a defend position, keep the balance sheet protected, then look at what the recovery plan looks like and how we do that through something that, from what I can read, is going to be with us for a while, and then start looking at what the new industry looks like, because I don't think it'll be the same.
Yeah, fair enough. And Mark Bull, anything that you're particularly got your sights set on? Is there anything that those tuning in that, you know, can do for you? You know, is there any information that you want out there that can help build upon what we've already created?
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly I'll be maintaining my sort of contact across the industry, and I guess if we want any help, it's to sort of know the question set really, or what would you like answers to, because we can set the surveys. They want to be relevant, they want to ask the right questions, and then hopefully if we go through the same scenario as what we just had with this survey, put it out there, quick turnaround, then everybody can see exactly where they stand within the industry. And I guess to body shops, it's quite clear, and beyond body shops really, nobody's in this on their own. Everybody's got similar problems, whether they're sort of working for insurers, accident managers, body shops, paint companies, etc. Everybody's being faced with issues that they've never been faced with before, and we are in it together. And I think as an industry, quite resilient and coming through the other side would be a good thing.
Absolutely. Right, well, fantastic stuff. It's been another superb week of webinars. Really appreciate the input from everybody. Chris, great that you finally sorted out your broadband at your mother-in-law's house, so thank her for us. Really appreciate your time, Mark Holding. I know you're a busy man there at the moment. Mark Bull, thanks for making a guest appearance, and thanks very much for all the work you did on the survey. Really good, and again, feedback, everything that I've heard so far has been really appreciative, so really appreciate the work you've done there. Thank you very much once again, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. Keep us posted on your thoughts, what you want to hear from next week. If there's any insurers, work providers listening in who fancy taking part, please let us know for next week and we'll get it all set up and all sorted. In the meantime, folks, take care. See you soon.